Welcome back to All This Math. This is Professor Parker. If you're here, hit the like button, please. Also, if you haven't subscribed already, hit the subscribe button. All right. Also, if you have any questions, right, as I'm going through my explanation of this topic we're about to get into, please put your questions in the comment section or put your comments in the comment section. And when we're done, send this video to at least 2 people. All right. Now, shout out to the ancestor, Omawale Malcolm X. Last week was actually his centennial birthday, May 19th, 2025. We celebrated, the 100-year anniversary of his birth. All right. Definitely make sure you are familiar, right, with Malcolm X, his speeches, autobiography, biographies that have been written about him, all right, of quality. All right. And also, I'm going to use what I call the Malcolm X method of factoring quadratic trinomials. The Malcolm X method of factoring quadratic trinomials. All right. Now let's get into it. So this is our quadratic trinomial. Why is it quadratic? Because the largest exponent you see is a 2, right? That makes this a quadratic. Why is it a trinomial? The prefix tri means 3. Just like a tricycle has 3 wheels. This has 1, 2, 3 terms. All right. Terms are separated by plus signs and minus signs. Plus signs and minus signs. Somebody might look at this and say, well, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, it's not. Because these 2 terms are not separated by a plus or minus sign. So 3x squared is 1 term. 4x is 1 term. 4, or actually -4, is 1 term. All right, so we got a trinomial and it's quadratic. Now, first thing you always want to do whenever you're factoring anything is you want to check for a greatest common factor. You want to see if these 3 terms have a greatest common factor. And the greatest common factor that they have is 1. So if 1 is your greatest common factor, it's almost as if it don't matter. It don't mean nothing. That don't help you. All right, so we skip that step. Because it's a quadratic trinomial, we then check to see what the lead coefficient is. Now, what's the lead coefficient? It's like the line leader in elementary school. It's the first coefficient you see. What's a coefficient, though? The coefficient is the number that's next to the variable that tells you how many of that term you have. So this 3 is a coefficient. This 4 is a coefficient. This -4 is a constant, right? But this 3 is a coefficient, and this is our first coefficient. It's in the lead. So that's our lead coefficient. Now, why does that matter? The lead coefficient matters because depending on whether it's a 1 or if it ain't a 1, that's going to determine how we factor it. If this was a 1, the way we factor it would be a lot easier, a lot more straightforward. Because it's not a 1, we got to do a little bit more work. We got to think a little bit more, which is cool because thinking is good. Thinking is a good practice to help develop our critical thinking skills so that we can solve problems in life in general. All right. So don't run from problem solving. Don't run from difficulty in math problems or challenge. All right. Run towards it. All right. So this is what we're going to do. First thing you want to do is we're going to draw X. All right, this is part of why I call this the Malcolm X method. All right, so look, in the top set, we're going to put numbers in the top, the bottom, the left, and the right. Top, bottom, left, right. Top, bottom, left, right. Now, what goes in the top? All right, now I hope you're taking notes. And if you need to pause the video, cool, pause the video. What goes in the top is the product between the lead coefficient and the constant at the end. The lead coefficient and the constant at the end. So that means you need to know how to do 3 times -4. And please don't use a calculator for that. That's nasty work. If you got to use a calculator to do 3 times -4, that's not a good look for real. You want to memorize your multiplication facts. Also know that multiplying a positive by a negative yields you a negative product always, not a positive, right? 3 times -4 is -12, all right? So what are we going to do with the -12? We're going to write it up here, all right? Now, the other thing we do is we take the middle coefficient, whatever it is, the middle coefficient, right? I call it the middle because this term is in the middle between this and this, right? Like a median if we was doing some statistics problems, right? In the middle. This 4 is the coefficient. You put that down here. You do not put the X down there. You only put the coefficient. You only put the coefficient. So we got our -12 and we got our 4. Now we got to do some thinking. We need to figure out what 2 numbers are factors of -12 that also add up to +4. Factors of -12 that add up to +4. What are factors? Factors are numbers that can be multiplied to arrive at this product with no remainders. All right. So for example, -4 and 3 are factors of -12 because we just multiplied those, right? +4 and -3 are factors. -12 and +1 are factors, right? See where I'm going here? -6 and 2 are factors. Now, of those factors, right? Hopefully you're able to do this mentally, but if not, just write a list of all the factors of negative 12. Just write them down on paper. All right, do what you got to do. Right, if you need to do that, if you need to do negative 12 times 1, negative 4 times 3, negative 6 times 2. If you need to write that down, write them down. And then say to yourself, okay, which one of these pairs adds up to positive 4? Because positive 4 is the middle coefficient. Negative 12 and 1 don't. Cross that off. Negative 4 and 3 don't. Cross that off. Negative 6 and 2. Be careful. What's negative 6 plus 2? Negative 6 plus 2 is negative 4. That's the right number with the wrong sign. I'm going to give you a hint. Put this in your notes. Whenever you get the right number with the wrong sign, all that means you got to do is just switch the signs. So instead of this being a negative 6, make him a positive 6. Make that a positive 6 and make this a negative 2. Because the two numbers still need to multiply and result in a product of negative 12. So one got to be negative and one got to be positive. But the way it was hooked up at first, that was the wrong number had the negative and the wrong number had the positive. So just switch them. Now, what's positive 6 plus negative 2? That's the same thing as saying 6 minus 2, which is 4. These are our two numbers. These are the two numbers we want to use. All right. So what are we going to do with those numbers? We're going to write them down right here. We're going to put a 6 over here, and we're going to put a negative 2 over here. All right. Now, from here, because again, Malcolm X method, so we got the X right here. So from here, then we're going to write out we're going to basically take the original expression and stretch it out. We're going to stretch it out, right? From a trinomial to a 4-term polynomial. From a trinomial to a 4-term polynomial. So the first term is still going to be there. So we got 3x squared, right? This 4x is going to get broken up into 6x minus 2x, 6x minus 2x, 6x minus 2x. So I'm going to have plus 6x, because that's positive, minus 2x, and then the minus 4 comes down. All right, so all I did, I took the original expression, stretched them out into like 4 terms. Then I'm going to do a method called factoring by grouping. Factoring by grouping. So if you're not familiar with how to do factoring by grouping, I suggest you go to my playlist on factoring by grouping right here on this channel. Hopefully you're subscribed to the channel and brush up on factoring by grouping. All right, so now let's get into some factoring by grouping. So because this third term is negative, I want to rewrite this expression. I'm going to rewrite this. 3x squared plus 6x. I'm going to put that in parentheses. Then I'm going to put a plus sign. Then I'm going to put these two terms in parentheses. Plus negative 2x minus 4. Right? Now, in order to factor by grouping, I need to find the greatest common factor of this binomial and the greatest common factor of this binomial and factor it out that way. So the greatest common factor of 3x squared and 6x is 3x. So I write 3x down. Then I put parentheses. Now what goes inside the parentheses? The quotient when I divide this by this, this by this. Like I said, if you need to brush up on how to find a GCF, greatest common factor, I got a playlist on that. You got to do the work though. You got to go do the research. You got to watch and learn. I got a whole playlist on factoring by grouping. If you want to brush up on that, that's cool too. All right. So 3x squared divided by 3x is equal to x. 6x divided by 3x is equal to 2. All right. Because 3 divided by 3 is 1. X squared divided by x is just x. All right. I got a playlist on how to divide variables using the exponent properties, using the division property. I got a playlist on that. Go brush up on that. Everything you need is right here on this channel. All right. Now I go over here. Now, the greatest common factor between these two, because these are both negative, instead of factoring out a positive 2, I'm going to factor out a negative 2. Why? Because these two terms are both negative, right? That's just a little tool of the trade that I'm putting you on to. When you got two terms that are both negative, don't factor out a positive GCF. Factor out a negative GCF. So we're going to do this. We're going to say minus 2. And then inside the parentheses, we're going to have negative 2x divided by negative 2, which is positive x. And then negative 4 divided by negative 2, which is positive 2. All right. Now, this is what we want. We got two binomials that match up. X plus 2 here, x plus 2 here, right? X plus 2 here, x plus 2 here. So that now we basically finding a GCF again. A GCF could be a binomial. It could be a trinomial, right? It don't always got to be a single monomial or a single term. So I take this x plus 2, boom, and then I basically divide this by x plus 2 and that leaves me with 3x, right? And then I divide this by x plus 2, that leaves me with minus 2, right? So now this is going to be our final answer because I can't factor this anymore. I can't break x plus 2 down no more. I can't break down 3x minus 2 no more. And now another reason I call this the Malcolm X method is because we can consider how Malcolm was a common factor. Malcolm was a common factor near the end of his life and after he had departed from the Nation of Islam, he started two organizations, right? The Muslim Mosque Incorporated and the Organization of Afro-American Unity. So dig this. Here's Malcolm. Here's Malcolm. Here is the Muslim Mosque Incorporated. Here is the OAAU, right? When you break it down, now you got Malcolm, you got Muslim Mosque Incorporated, you got OAAU. That's just a way to think about it, right? Just a way to think about it and just a way to remind us, using Malcolm X and his history and his legacy, how to do some algebra. So I call it the Malcolm X method because of the X we have right here. And then when we break it, we do the factoring by grouping. We got 4 terms. We break them down into 2 separate binomials, and then we find the GCF, right? Whatever's in common. Malcolm was the common factor. He was the common factor in those 2 different organizations, right? Again, the Muslim Mosque Incorporated and the Organization of Afro-American Unity, right? He was the common factor, the x plus 2 and the x plus 2, right? And then when you combine it all together, right, you got x plus 2, which is Malcolm, which we could say represents Malcolm. Then we got the 3x minus 2, which represents the 2 different organizations. All right, and this is how you factor a quadratic trinomial when your lead coefficient is not a 1. When your lead coefficient is not a 1. If your lead coefficient was a 1, we'd have been done like 5 minutes ago. This would have been much more straightforward. This is probably the most challenging form of factoring, or the most challenging form of factoring that you'll encounter in Algebra 1. All right, but don't come out of Algebra 1 not knowing how to do this, because if you come out of Algebra 1 not knowing how to do this, you really didn't learn Algebra 1 for real, right? You really ain't learned it. And yeah, you need to know how to do this, because what's going to happen when you get to geometry? What's going to happen when you get to Algebra 2? You still need to know how to do this. It don't go away. All right, so make sure you know how to do this. Again, I got playlists on a whole lot of things that you need to know, right, to be successful in mathematics and also to be successful in life with problem solving. I know a lot of people watching these videos be like, well, I got to learn this. How's it going to help me? What's this for? When am I going to use this? You're developing your problem solving ability. And as human beings, we will have problems. You will have problems. A lot of people have miserable lives because they don't know how to solve problems, because their problems, they become overwhelmed by their problems, and all they know how to do is try to escape their problems, and which leads to unhealthy behavior. Go talk to some old heads. They'll tell you, if they're honest. They really want to be honest, they'll tell you. All right, now, so make sure you learn as much algebra as you can, geometry, all that. This is an important skill. Like I said, in Algebra 1, this is a very important skill for you to have. All right, and this is not the only way to factor a quadratic trinomial. This is only one way, right? There are some other methods. There's a trial and error method. There's a, what is it called? Another method. I got examples in the playlist on factoring quadratic trinomials where a does not equal 1, right? But it's some other methods. All right, so make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Share this video with at least 2 people, please. And if you got any questions or comments, still put your questions or comments in the comment section down below. All right, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.